Hello and welcome to Setting the Stage, Episode 76, Floating Island Worlds, Alan and Fractus. This is a Kickstarter project started by Alan Tucker, where it's a bunch of islands floating in the sky that are connected by flying airships or like magic carpets, anything you can use to fly. It's should be live now for the next few weeks, so if you're interested after the end of this, go check it out. And now we have some ads to get through, unless you have a Patreon account. So if you want to skip the ads next time, go subscribe to our Patreon. Thank you. I'm here with Alan Tucker, who's working on Fractus, which is a new Kickstarter that's coming out soon for Daggerheart. So hi, Alan. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Just had some cheesy ramen, which is this new novel product for dinner, which was actually fine. You could barely taste the cheese, which is probably a good thing in most Asian cuisine, but whatever. Right. Well, usually we start off by trying to figure out more about who you are outside of the campaign you're talking about. So who is Alan outside of RPGs and Fractus?
Oh dear, outside of RPGs and Fractus, let's see. I have worn many hats over the the course of the years, but started playing RPGs back in when dinosaurs walked the earth in the early 80s, and did that for quite a while. But then had a time period where this thing called life seemed to interrupt the RPG playing, of course, and but I got back into it around a little after the time when 5e came out, so it was 15 or 16, and I had written some sci-fi and fantasy novels in the meantime, and done graphic design, layout, that sort of thing for many years. When I rediscovered the hobby, I had those things as background and discovered the DM's Guild and thought, well, shoot, I can do this, and just began on that sort of journey and been doing that ever since. But yeah, gosh, I mean, I coached club soccer and high school and that type of thing for many years. All the while, like I said, kind of my main focus has been graphic design and layout work and print production, that sort of thing, since the mid 90s, I guess.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. I coach my kids soccer as well, although she's starting to want to move up beyond what I'm want to do.
Yeah, I enjoyed working with the kids. The parents sometimes were a bit of a headache, but
yeah. What are some of the books that you've written? What are they like?
The novels.
Yeah.
First one I wrote was a trilogy that was for young adults called the Mother Earth series, and basically revolved around a group of middle schoolers who got transferred to this kind of other world that was kind of intertwined with Earth, but kind of existing in the same realm or something like that. I guess
kind of like Narnia.
Sort of, yeah. And where we got and creatures that came over, kind of bled over from that world, were where the original fairy tales and things like that, those sort of creatures came. For so in other words, there was sort of a basis in reality for some of those stories, for different creatures and some of those things. But at any rate, the kids end up becoming transformed themselves within this other world. Some of them become elves, and some of them become even elemental creatures and things like that.
Okay.
And there's a lot of back and forth that happens and that sort of thing. So,
gotcha. That sounds cool.
I also wrote a science fiction, or more science, I guess science fantasy, but anyway, about a older teenager who becomes recruited by people called the Timekeepers, and has all sorts of adventures and in and out of time and things like that. So that was the first one, and that one is called Not in Time, and KNOT. And yeah, that was a lot of fun to write. So
yeah, I like time travel stories a lot. That's fun. You said you started playing in the 80s, so that would be probably first edition AD&D?
basically AD&D is where, I mean, we did start with first edition, but by the time it's funny because my friends at the time all had played and had played for a couple of years or more. This was back when I was just starting high school. But my opinion of the whole thing was that it was really silly, and I didn't want to have anything to do with it.
Fair enough.
And so, of course, here I am, the one that's made sort of a career out of it, I guess, in the end. But yeah, it was AD&D, and gosh, we played all kinds of stuff. We played Top Secret, we played Marvel Superheroes, we played a lot of that. That was one of our main things besides D&D, and then of course other games, along the way.
Yeah,
board and also RPG. But
I don't think you can even get that Marvel Superheroes anymore, because that's like, they didn't do as big a print run of that, and I think like they've had the new one that was in like the late 90s, and then the other one that came out like a few years ago since then.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually still have all of that stuff that I had at the time, but
treasure it.
It's well worn, but
yeah. So were you DMing back then, or is that something that you did more of once you came back to the hobby more recently?
Yeah, no, I did. I definitely did back then, and in fact, it was that. I mean, I enjoyed playing, but it wasn't very long before I brought a couple of those friends in, and this was right around the time where I was deciding, well, maybe I should give this a try, and I went out actually and bought the Dungeon Master's Guide first and looked through that, and then kind of I made my own little dungeon thing, and asked a couple of my friends to come over and kind of sprung this on them to say, hey, I'd like to give this a try, and here's how I think it goes, and then so I ran them through through this dungeon that I had made, and yeah, that was kind of how everything started, but it was fun.
Yeah. It's as good as any start.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you said you sort of made a career out of that, and yeah, I did see that you'd had a few other Kickstarters and stuff on Drive-Thru RPG and DM's Guild.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you've got a pretty good backlog for being an independent publisher. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't remember. I haven't even counted lately, but I'm pretty sure it's well over 50 things out there that I've done, and I've also participated in others that probably aren't maybe on that list. But yeah, I honestly the thing I enjoy the most probably is the collaboration and working with people literally from all over the world. I mean, it's just really fulfilling to me, and really charges my batteries to be able to work with people just from all sorts of cultures and walks of life and everything else. And
yeah.
Lots of fun.
Yeah, that's kind of why I'm doing this too. Yeah. Well, yeah. So let's talk about Fractus. So this is a Kickstarter project that, depending on when this episode comes out, will be live.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a Daggerheart product, from what I could figure out.
Yep.
And you'd mentioned working with other people. Is this like primarily you, or is there some other people that are working heavily on it?
This one's going to be primarily me, although I have several artists I'm working with, and probably at least 2 or 3 other writers. But this one's kind of a passion project.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the first big Daggerheart project I did worked with Chris Davidson, who's also one of the additional writers for the actual core book. We did Incredible Creatures here a few months ago, and that has been very successful, and very well received, that sort of thing. And so that's sort of the impetus for this, and also enabling me to kind of be a little selfish and delve into this into this passion project of mine.
Yeah, and I know a little bit about Daggerheart from like being in the RPG space, so I'm familiar somewhat with it, and I know it has this like campaign frame kind of thing. Is that kind of what your product is, or is there more to it than that?
It will be. Yeah, it's quite a bit more. It's probably more along the lines of what you would think of as a setting book that from D&D. There's although it will be structured differently, but it'll definitely be more in depth and varied than one campaign frame in particular. They have several of those in the core rule book, and they are what I would call like snapshots of a particular world or setting that you might play in and have adventures in.
Okay.
And so what we're producing then is going to be much more in depth and have more more meat to it.
Gotcha. Okay. And from what I've read about Daggerheart, it's mostly still a standard fantasy system like D&D or Pathfinder, but the way that the combat is set up is it's designed to be much more like cinematic and kind of more of a give and take between the hero side and the villain side for like how the action progresses, where the heroes kind of get to keep going until they fail, and then the villains kind of get to swing back in a hard way for how combat works.
Yeah, essentially the real nuts and bolts mechanic of it is what they call the duality dice, which is that's what the players use to perform any action of significance that they are going to do if they're casting a spell or they're attacking or any of the typical fantasy RPG things. It's 2 dice rather than a single D20 or something like that. And one of them represents hope and one of them represents fear. So the dice are rolled and they're added together, but it's also significant as to which one is higher in that, whether the hope is higher or the fear is higher, or if they're the same, then indicates a critical success. And because of that, a roll with hope generates hope for the characters, and that's a resource that they use to do some of their abilities. And then a roll with fear gives the GM is their resource, which is fear, that is then used to fuel the adversary's abilities or to maybe interject during play, things like that. And so it's that give and take and back and forth all the time was something I really, really latched onto. That and the more storytelling aspects of it, I think, really appealed to the way I like to play RPGs.
Yeah. So it seemed like it really felt like it was designed to create something more like a TV show, with like sort of fun and snarky combat kind of stuff, whereas D&D feels like it's more about I don't know, like an archaeological dig. I mean, that's not quite it, but like I'm trying to come up with some comparison here.
It's certainly more rigid. There's more rules. I mean, Daggerheart has it's definitely has its fair share of rules, but the game encourages the players and the GM to kind of go with the flow, and the story itself is more important than, well, do I have a bonus on this to be able to to do this or that sort of thing that you can.
Right.
D&D sometimes kind of gets in the weeds, and the rules can get in the way instead of benefiting the storytelling.
Yeah. So what parts of that have you capitalized when making Fractus?
It's definitely been a journey and one I'm still working on. The project obviously isn't finished yet. We'll wrap up probably sometime in the summer, I would guess, and we delivering at that point once the Kickstarter's finished. But really, the organization and how things are presented is one of the things I've really focused on, and just what a GM in a more open world, an open setting, open storytelling game wants, and tools for them to be able to play in that sort of style a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
What we're doing is creating, not necessarily creating the whole world, although we have a very gorgeous map made by Fernando Salvaterra for the world itself, but we're not populating the entire thing. We're trying to leave space in there for the GM to be able to say, "Oh, that looks cool. I want to put this there." Or even the players during the time that they're maybe having a session 0 saying, "Okay, well, I want my character to be from this sort of area, and I want the town to be named X," and that that sort of thing, and be able to have the flexibility to move things around and put things where you want. And that's kind of where we're going for. I want to give GMs a lot of modular pieces, like puzzle pieces that they can then fit in, where it makes sense for them and
Yeah.
their table.
Yeah, and it definitely feels like that even works within the reality of the setting very well, where the way it's like physically structured, you could imagine that being how it works within where things are, which I guess we should get into explaining now. Why is the world like that?
Well, it came about. I actually led a project called Apocalypse: Complete GM's Guide for Ending the World, which was a system agnostic book that I asked a number of writers to. We had 2 sections for it. One was articles related to giving GMs advice about having campaigns which dealt with apocalypse or apocalyptic themes. And then we also had game scenarios, which were, again, just system agnostic for all just a whole dearth of genres and types of RPGs at the end. And so, at any rate, long story short, the cover I had commissioned by an artist named Eduardo Comaton was the image of basically a planet kind of in mid-explosion.
Yeah, I'm taking a look at it now. Yeah, it's great.
That was kind of the kernel for Fractus itself. Was, what if a world began to explode but stopped? And the way this is, and some of the touchstones that I'm kind of taking for this are both the Avatar movies and the Last Airbender Fallout, and I'm kind of pitching it as Avatar meets Fallout in Narnia, and
Okay.
because of all of the there's a number of ancestries within Daggerheart that are sort of anthropomorphic beasts and things like that. I wanted a kind of an explanation for why all of these disparate things and people are just all over the place and intertwined and things like that. And so that's part of the part of the lore of the world itself. But to get back to so the world began to explode but stopped, and so all the oceans and the inner mantle and things like that of the planet itself have kind of evaporated, and all that's there are clouds and air with a magical maelstrom, which is at the core of the planet, kind of holding everything together. And some of the themes I wanted to explore with that was geography determining social progress and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, we have on Earth, we have a moon that we look up to every night, and there's a lot of theory out there that we wouldn't have, if that wasn't there, we wouldn't maybe have had the incentive to develop space travel as much and as quickly as we did, if there wasn't something out there as a goal to go, well, what is that thing, and can we get there?
Yeah, the moon is much more accessible than Mars or Venus.
Right, exactly. And so if you live on a landmass that is just surrounded on all sides by air, there's no oceans, etc., and you see another landmass that is off in the distance, you might be inclined to try to develop some way to cross that gap.
Yep.
With some sort of air travel. And so there are societies, there's magical societies who've developed the flying carpet, and there's others who have tamed animals to fly. Some have designed airships and other things like that.
Yeah, the big airship you've got is the sort of the big art on the Kickstarter page.
Yeah.
Is there still like gravity towards the maelstrom in general?
Yeah, so the way I'm explaining it basically is that yes, the maelstrom is kind of the gravitational force, but the reason why the land masses don't collapse in on it is they have been infused with a magical material that acts as like anti-gravity. And so everything is at a status quo or a stability point.
Okay, yeah. So the world blew up. Is there a reason it blew up, and a reason it stopped?
Right. So that's one thing that we're sort of leaving up to the GMs and the players to decide. We're giving them a number of ideas as to why it might have happened. One of which is a fight with the gods. There's the idea that maybe the world originally was like Earth, it was just humans, and the magic and etc. kind of breaking after is what created all of the other ancestries and things like that.
Okay.
And so it's possible that something that the humans did is what made this happen, and a god or some other force intervened and said, "Whoops, wait, stop, and we'll hold it here." The maelstrom is possibly the prison of some being that is either holding things together, or possibly they almost broke out maybe, and that's why the world began to explode, but the gods were able to keep that intact. Again, that's kind of where we're headed with that, is to let the tables each kind of decide what led to this breaking.
Yeah. No, I feel like a lot of settings do that, where the really big mysteries are not answered, because that almost makes it more interesting for RPG groups to pick up and come up with their own answer if they want to.
Right.
Is the maelstrom dangerous? I mean, there's this element of like, okay, well, what happens if you go down into it and then come back up? Is that possible? Good? Bad?
Well, again, that would kind of be up to somebody. If you fell, it would more than likely.
Right, falling is bad. I'm assuming more like you have something that has the power to go down and back up.
Yeah. So yeah, again, that would be something that, possibly a high level adventure, might contain that for some characters down the road. Again, it would kind of all depend on what they decided the cause of this whole thing was, and what exactly is down in there. It was interesting in doing some sort of science for this. If you have an Earth-sized body, and in this situation it's just filled with air. If you fell off the edge of one of the land masses, you actually would fall for over a day before reaching that central core.
Yeah.
Just because of it's several thousand miles deep.
Yeah, the Earth is 8,000 diameter, so 4,000 miles to fall to the center.
Right.
Which
terminal velocity is roughly 140, 150 miles an hour.
Right.
Which you can regulate somewhat, slow that down a bit if you make yourself big or something like that. But at any rate, to cover that distance, it would take over a day, over 24 hours to fall that far.
It's a long time.
It is a long time.
It also makes me consider that since if the maelstrom isn't physical, then you could fall through it without hitting anything, and then you're basically an orbiting body until you get dehydrated or something.
Yeah, could be.
Not something you want to do.
Probably not.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the oceans evaporated. Is there still you could have magic as an explanation for this, but within a physical planet, what keeps the atmosphere there is the iron core of the Earth rotating and creating a magnetic pull on all of the gases in the atmosphere. Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming that that's not there, but you've said there is still an atmosphere, which makes me think the water still has to be there somewhere too, in cloud or mist form.
Right, which is why, much of that space is filled with clouds, and so you've got all kinds of different cloud layers moving, maybe orbiting in different speeds and layers and things like that. The land masses themselves, some of them are still continental sized, and so they still have inland seas and rivers and that sort of thing. But yes, a lot of areas are fairly humid, because of that and things like that. But yeah, that was to me just the idea of the different layers of the clouds and the atmosphere and everything else. I mean, who knows what might exist, or I mean, we have some creatures, because there is so much air. A lot of the creatures kind of adapted to be able to fly or glide or things like that, and whether through magic or just general evolution. There's giant octopi, and there's dragons. In fact, the art that is being produced right now for the cover of the book we'll have a giant dragon that's come upon an airship, and it's really, really exciting. I think cool. It's going to be a really fun piece. But giant floating whales and other creatures like that, as well as other smaller predators and whatnot. So
neat. Another thing that exists within planets is all the stuff that's below the mantle. Mm-hmm. All the molten rock,
right?
The magma and lava. And that spitting out would obviously probably solidify once it's exposed to air. Mm-hmm. So is that the case, or is it still around as liquid? magma that you have to worry about as an island being like that.
Yeah, no, it's not, and in fact, so there's part of the lore is, and again, maybe one of these explanations for why this happened was there's a fairly small pantheon of gods. There's a god of light or the sun, which is Ilyanya. There is a god of storms, which we're calling Jodern, and that may be manifested as the maelstrom or just maybe just a general sort of thing.
Okay.
And then there's those two are the ones that kind of interact with people the most, as far as ones that are worshipped, etc. There's a third, which is Luwadu, which is the god of death, and that's basically a judge as to whether when someone perishes, they send their soul either to Ilanya or Jodern. Not necessarily good and evil, but just two different places to go.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are the four elements, which are, earth, water, wind, and fire. Earth is called Namine, which is what the planet originally was called.
Oh, okay.
And then there was a war or conflict between the other three elements who all wanted to gain favor of Earth. Again, one idea for this was this conflict kind of was a cataclysm in the making. And during this time, then fire was diminished greatly, and that's why all of the mantle, etc., is gone. So there are still the remnants of volcanoes, which were there, begin with, but now they are depleted and are empty, and so they're just kind of warrens of lava tubes and hollow mountains, that sort of thing, because there is no more magma to support them.
Yeah, that's cool. I do want to talk more about the gods and the religion, but I wanted to go back to the technology that people are using to get between the islands and continents at this point.
Okay.
You'd mentioned airships, and is gravity still like the same strength, or could someone like theoretically fly with like, I don't know, like paper wings, like Icarus or something like that?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. The way I've envisioned it is, gravity is basically the same strength, but because of just the vast amount of air and the depth of it, you could, in theory, create a glider or something like that, where we're able to manipulate the different air currents, etc., or possibly have a hot air balloon or anything like that to be able to maneuver around without the assistance of magic or something like that. But it's, again, the gravity itself is basically Earth-like. But if you did fall off, it's not an immediate end for you. If somebody has access to, like in Daggerheart, they have fairies, which are one of the ancestries. They all have wings. They can fly.
Yeah.
You could have, if there was a rescue team available, they could fly down there, catch up to you, and be able to, catch you as you're in during that very long fall. In fact, one of the adventure that I'm writing this will be as the free preview for the book itself, is the largest community of these fairies live behind a waterfall, which falls into an area on this main large continent body called Hole in the World. Very not very creative, I suppose, but it's more
Many
matter of
names
fact.
are not. They're just
That's
a
right.
different language.
Exactly. So at any rate, there's a river that that falls into this hole and just goes down, into the depths of the air in the world. But behind the waterfall itself, there's kind of an indentation and a cliff in the cliff face where these fairies have created themselves a community here. And because the area itself is so interesting, they have turned it into a tourist resort destination for people who want to, explore. And they have their personal gliders that they've created so people can train on those for a couple hours, and then they can fly around within this hole in the world area with the fairies kind of flying along with them as guidance, etc. In case anything goes wrong, then they can take care of them. But that's the setting for this free adventure that will be offered.
Okay, yeah, that sounds like a fun one. Going back to religion and like the cosmology, there's this sort of structure for D&D cosmology that I feel like a lot of other settings use, of like there's hell where demons come from, and there's heaven where angels come from, because those are standard monsters in D&D. And then you need the four planes, and you also need like the shadow plane and the astral plane and the ethereal plane. So there's all this sort of like prescribed stuff just for a lot of the magic that is within D&D to make sense.
Right.
Is Daggerheart structured the same way, where you kind of, there's this expectation for what other planes there are, or is there more freedom in what you get to like slap on there?
Yeah, so Daggerheart doesn't really come with a presupposed cosmology or structure for the planes and things. I mean, it's insinuated that there are demons and other creatures like this, but it's not specified really anywhere as to where they come from or what their origins might be. In designing this, I wanted to have some more ambiguity in the gods and the deities, and not necessarily make a heaven and a hell, but just two sometimes competing, sometimes cooperating deities with this third entity that kind of is sort of a judge between the two and things like that. So to me, it leads to more interesting, maybe moral stories than just a clear cut, well, this is good and this is bad, and that sort of thing. So
yeah, definitely. All right. Well, yeah, you said there was 10 gods, so you have the two that I'm forgetting the names of.
Well, that's fine. It says the sun and storms,
right,
are the two, and then you have death or the judge. That's the same thing. And then really there's really only four. The four others would be the four elements.
Okay.
So I guess seven altogether, but there's the main three are the sun, the storms, and death or judge.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. People usually choose to worship within, like, polytheistic religions they pick the largest thing around them, which is usually sun, sky, mountain, that kind of thing. So
right.
Storm and sun would be the biggest things in the sky. And with that structure, it seems like it's sort of a mono religion for the way people practice it, compared to like Earth, where there's like tons of different religions. This one, it feels like, from how you've described it, it's much more of a, this is the answer, we have it, and everyone can sort of follow the same practices. Is that the idea?
Sort of. I mean, you would have people who follow the sun more than the storms, or even people who are more interested in the judge or death. And then there are also people who would be more interested in the four elements in one fashion or another. So, and in fact, in the southern desert areas, there are elemental people of the earth who are, if you think to D&D, they have earth elementals and things like that. So they're sort of based on that, but they're more of a people rather than just these creatures.
Okay.
And they view themselves as children of the earth, and there are also some children of the water, and even the other elements too. But they don't really interact with people on such a visceral level as the children of the earth mostly will do. They blame the humans for the breaking, and so they're kind of opposed to humanity, meaning all people in general, and that's one of the conflicts that's going on within the setting.
Yeah. I mean, it makes some sense that the people that would interact most with the humans or whatever other races you have would be the ones that are like physical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, what other races do you have within it? You mentioned the people of the earth, water, air, and fire, and the fairies.
Right. So again, like I said, Daggerheart has got quite a number of ancestries that they have, and then we're also adding avians, which would be any sort of bird person.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a playable thing. And there's also some creatures called wilders, which are best way to describe them is kind of a combination of a shark and a simian. So they're like almost like monkey sharks or ape sharks.
Like the sharks from Street Sharks, maybe?
Yeah, kind of, I guess, but a little more apish, I suppose. But
More hairy.
yeah,
Okay.
but they view themselves as kind of natural guardians. They live generally in the forests and jungles and places like that, and yeah, they give themselves the job of taking care of those things. And so when other people maybe come in and try to take the resources or of a forest or something like that, there's conflict there as well. But as far as the playable things go, there's a whole plethora of them in Daggerheart in the core rules, and so I didn't feel the need to add to those except for the bird people.
And it's easy enough to have like someone could say we're going to use elves, dwarves, and humans for the islands we're going to, but if you want to play a turtle person, you can be from an island that's over there, and you showed up. But that's the reason there's no other turtle people here, is because you're from a different island.
Well, the way again, to me, and just thinking about in fantasy RPGs in general, the way things have gone. I mean, when we played back in the day, there wasn't this huge number of different races and ancestries that you could play. But now you've got the tieflings are devilish people. You've got giant people. You've got what are they? Qatari. I mean, if you look, looking at some Pathfinder and some of these other things, there's all sorts of things. And again, Daggerheart has got lots of them. So one thing that I really wanted to do was come up with an idea, something different, where as a reason for all of these different peoples to be anywhere that they were, and not necessarily just because maybe it's a cosmopolitan area, but that you could find any of these ancestries in any setting. And so because pre-breaking the world was just populated with humans, and then magic as well as the world itself kind of broke, it created all of these other things. And so when a baby is born in Fractus, it's born human, but within the first few weeks or months, it begins to change and can become any, with a couple of exceptions, can become any of the ancestries. You may be an elf, for instance, but you may have a turtle person as your mother and a frog person as your father.
Okay.
And it's just random. And so, again, that was kind of one theme I wanted to explore was the idea of found family and nature versus nurture.
Yeah, it also feels like you wouldn't have, like, a lot of the races like get their sort of social definitions from the way Tolkien wrote them.
Right.
For, the standard ones that are in D&D, and that usually carries over into other RPG constructs. But with the way that you've described it, it feels like there would be almost no social convention that's attached to your ancestry at all, because it's just random.
Exactly. Right. And so that, to me, it's like I said, it was just an interesting theme to explore, was the idea that how much of your essence is genetic, for lack of a better word, and how much of it is shaped by the world that you live in or that you grow up in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely something for people to explore that if they want to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, while we're kind of on this topic, what are the sort of different cultural areas that you have within the setting?
So, in the places that we're exploring within this book, there's one very large continental mass, which is, we're actually kind of just doing the western half of that, and then there's a handful of larger islands that are close to it. And so, on the main continental mass, there's an area called the Sparkling Sea, which has 3 different countries that have been established around it, and those are pretty standard fantasy fare as far as their social makeup or composition, that sort of thing. There's some standard, the coastal cities and things like that, and we have one is kind of a theocracy that's governed by people who worship Jodern, the storm god, more. There's one that's pretty fantasy cosmopolitan sort of thing that's called Starsvale, and it has one quite large city with it that would be maybe analogous to a Waterdeep or something like that in a D&D setting.
Right. Yeah.
And then there's the third one is called Brillis, and it's more of a rigid kind of anti-magic in general society. They don't trust magic, that sort of thing. And those are the ones that are kind of central around this large sea. The islands, there's one group of them to the north called the Free States, which are mercantile corporations that have gotten so large that they needed to form governments, and they're the ones that are the main purveyors of the airships and things like that.
Yeah, I think we'd mentioned this a bit before, but with technology evolving over time. But it seems like the the governments have also evolved over time. Like you'd assume after some event like
Mm-hmm.
this that a lot of governments would basically collapse.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like they've evolved to the point where you said like the free cities are able to have like a new collective organization instead of just like a single rulership point. They have something that's more collective, which takes longer to develop.
Mm-hmm.
So it's clearly been a while since the breaking.
Yeah, thousands of years. Everything was pretty well wiped out. There are things can be discovered from the time before the breaking, ancient vaults and things like that. That's kind of where some of the fallout aspects come in, where you have maybe some of these people before kind of saw this coming and thought, oh gosh, what can we do to try to save everything? And created some places where they at least wanted to try to weather whatever it was, whatever catastrophe was coming, but they didn't understand maybe what the scope of what was going to happen. But at any rate, yes, it's been, most everything obviously would have been wiped out in the initial thing, and so it's taken several thousand years to come back to this point.
Right. Well, you were saying you were just finished the free cities, and you were talking about the
Right,
next
and
one, I
then
think.
so then there's another island to the west of the main continent called Vorsland, which is very much a wizardy magic society. They've really latched onto that, and they're the one they've developed flying carpets and other conveyances that are purely magical, rather than the airships, which are maybe quasi magic, steampunky, steam engine sort of hot air balloon and other conveyance types of things. Whereas the people who live kind of in the sparkling sea area never really had the necessity to develop these things, and so these others have kind of come in and discovered them, in quotes. um, and so now at the time where these stories, we're imagining these stories are happening, has been just a few years since they've kind of come in contact with these other groups, and so there's some mingling and conflict and whatever going on that way. Some people are trying to assert influence, others are just trying to learn and whatever else. So there's a lot of that sort of stuff happening.
So, I mean, clearly there's some parallels to like the age of exploration for Europe there for the
Sure.
newcomers coming in, and as Americans we're sort of used to the how that worked in America, but it sounds like the cultures are more like powerfully developed within what you've set up. So maybe there's more ways you could find analogies with how colonization worked in like India and China.
Yeah, it's not, yeah, you don't really have a situation except maybe in the area of where we talked about the Wilders before. Another one of the introductory adventures that will be in the book is there's a town called Jacktown that is a kind of a bastion where the Free States have come. They came across for looking for resources because their islands were, obviously limited. Could see on a clear day, you could see the main continental mass across the way from this group of islands that the Free States are on. And so eventually they made their way over there and started plundering. There weren't any settlements in those areas that they first started exploring, and so they began to harvest resources, trees, mining, etc.
Right.
So there's a place called Jacktown, which is kind of at the edge of the forest, where they are all of these Free State companies are attempting to go in and harvest the wood and the things, and they then begin to come in conflict with the Wilders. And so that's one of the first adventures. We're designing these. There'll be 3 or 4 at least of these introductory adventures, which are basically designed to be springboards for if you want to, maybe you want to run a campaign that has to do with this nature versus the corporations sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you want to run a campaign that has a lot of political intrigue among some of the other countries. The Starsvale, the country that has the largest city, their ruler, after many years, they're an elf, and so they're long lived. They are abdicating the throne. They have not had any progeny, and so they are abdicating to one of their relatives who isn't particularly popular. And so they're saying that in a year's time they're abdicating. So there's going to be a large influx of people trying to influence what's going on there. So if you want a sort of a political intrigue campaign, you can start there with one of those adventures. The fairy one that I mentioned earlier that'll be offered for free is titled Fear It Forever Falls, and the fairies in that community recently, they have had some mysterious deaths happening, and they've had to because they weren't able to determine the cause of these things. They evacuated up to the top, up above the falls where they have the kind of this resort area, and the adventurers are tasked with going down into the village that's been evacuated and finding out what's happening.
Yeah.
And so there's you may have dungeon delving if you want to do that as your main campaign idea, to maybe finding these ancient vaults and other things that existed before the breaking. So yeah, there'll be lots of those different types of things. Whatever kind of campaign you want to run, we're hoping to be able to have a jumping off point with these different adventures for that. So getting back to your colonization thing, then yes, there's definitely a lot of different types of conflict along those lines, and not so much the technologically advanced coming in to take over the less advanced civilizations or whatever, but more of everyone's on an equal but different footing.
Right. Yeah. It sounded like the island nations were kind of able to move their islands from how you were describing it. Is that what's happening?
No, I was just saying that they were, because there's three islands that are in fairly close proximity to each other, and then they are relatively close to the central continental landmass. So they were able to see, oh hey, there's stuff over there, there's stuff over there. So they developed the airships and things like that to be able to move in between their islands initially, and then eventually start exploring the main continental area. I can your listeners won't be able to see this, of course, but I can put
satisfies my curiosity.
I can, yeah, I'll give you a kind of have a better idea of what I'm talking about. So those 3 islands that are north central there are where the free states are. You've got the Sparkling Sea, which is the large body of water there, and then there's 3 countries around that. Vorsland, where the mages are, is the lush island to the west, and then there's obviously a few others around. But
that reminds me of something else you'd said earlier. What does west mean in this world?
Yeah, there's a lot of things, and I've experimented with this in campaigns in going all the way back, in fact, in trying to rename the days of the week, have different day and night cycles and directions and things like that. And I've found, at least in my experience, that those things are fun to conceptualize, but they fall apart in play.
That's my experience too.
And
Yep.
so it's just easier to take, have some of those things just be universal truths, even if they maybe necessarily wouldn't be. But for the purposes of playing a game, it's much easier for people to say, oh yeah, we're going to go do that on Tuesday, rather than, if we I know in the Forgotten Realms and D&D, they have the 10-day and the, all of these things, and people don't keep track of that. It's fun in concept, but it's kind of a pain in the neck as far as actually sitting down and playing a game.
Mm-hmm. Right. So when I've read campaign settings, it's felt like there's kind of two different kinds, if you split them up in this way, of like ones that are more focused and trying to be more like a campaign setting for a specific type of campaign, and the other kind is more wide and trying to give you a world that obviously you can't have all the details in because you're not writing, an encyclopedia. You're writing one book, and that means you need to be more broad, but also focusing into specific points to try and give people ideas for campaigns. And it sounds like you've done a good job of that by having the 4 different starting adventures for people, so that there's not just places that someone can fill in the gaps for something to do for an adventure, but you actually have little adventures for people to start with. So that's a pretty good design for it. I like that.
Thank you. Yeah, again, I spent a long time with this after kind of adopting Daggerheart last year when it came out. I'd played in the beta some and looked at it, liked the ideas, but then when the full game came out, I really latched onto it. By its nature in being more story focused, and also it asks the players to participate in the world building, and in a lot of the aspects of it. And so it requires, in my mind at least, a different way of kind of approaching these sorts of materials. And I don't know if this will be, what Darrington Press ends up doing. They'll have some, start having some campaign materials, I think, coming out maybe next year. But again, it would, for me at least, in as a GM and thinking about what GMs would want, that's really where we're focused in trying to figure out, okay, what's going to be most useful for somebody who wants to run a campaign.
Yeah.
And having that concrete starting off point, and then providing as many tools and specific things. I mean, the book is going to have, I don't even have any idea how many we'll end up with, but a bunch of NPCs. It will have locations, just very specific locations detailed out. Some of them will be maybe cities or towns. Others will be like there's that west of Hole in the World area there's some dormant, ancient volcanoes that are now, again, they're just hollow mountains with lots of tunnels and things, and that will be one of the things will be detailed out as to what might be living in there, and what those areas are like, things like that. And to be able to, again, just to take these pieces, and maybe you use this map in this world, maybe you don't, but you will still be able to have something, lots of things in this book that you'll be able to pluck out and maybe put into your own setting if you wanted to, just to give you some of those concrete details. And
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, well, like you said, very modular.
right.
Yeah. What are some of the big threats in the world? So not just like, you know, Joe the bandit leader, but like, you know, sort of a big demon or a expanding empire kind of thing.
Yeah, so there are, I mean, aerial predators honestly are a big deal.
Yeah.
Um, like I mentioned before, there's, you've got dragons, well, the big whale creatures are not necessarily predators, but there are giant octopi who patrol the skies, not necessarily around the land masses, but in other places. They're called cloud stalkers, and they have some camouflaging ability like octopi do, that sort of thing. The children of the earth, that again, they live in that southern portion, and they are constantly harassing the people of Brillis, which is where that country is to the south of the Sparkling Sea. There's a culture in the area, kind of in and around those dormant volcanoes. That area is called the Windswept Plains, and they are kind of a nomadic group that kind of cycles around that area in sailing land sailing wagon kind of things, and they basically just sort of live off of anyone else who is trying to maybe farm or live in that area. They kind of go through and take their tribute and cycle through that area over the course of a year.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it sounds a lot like sort of nomadic horse riders, just with
Right.
wagons instead.
Yeah. And some of the countries themselves, like the Free States are, like I mentioned, they're basically just big corporations. So you've got that as an element, that could certainly be your big bad for a campaign. Is trying to take down one or more of these corporations, because they call themselves free states, but of course, as we all know from being in the throes of late stage capitalism, freedom is a is a word that gets tossed around an awful lot, that isn't necessarily true in many cases. So,
I was thinking about technology for a world like this, and it seems like a lot of what you and I have described and imagined as sort of like transportation technology, just because, you know, the physicality of the world has changed, but a lot of the other things haven't. So like you still need like a bowl and a spoon to eat soup, for example. Are there any other technologies that you've thought of that are like different or special?
Maybe not technologies per se, but the breaking didn't just break the world; it sort of broke magic as well. And I've kind of touched on that before with the reason for the different ancestries and things like that for people. It also, things like healing and conjured food and things like that will sometimes have actually adverse effects because the magic isn't working the way it should. And that's one of the reasons why that one country is kind of averse to magic. They don't trust it. Another instance of this is in the kind of the time frame that we're beginning this setting. The year before, the country on the northeast side of the Sparkling Sea, the Jodern worshipping country, some of their people, they were experiencing some famine, or at least some difficult times as far as growing crops was concerned, and so a group of the leaders decided to use magic to try to get some of the crops to grow, etc. But that backfired because of a thing called conjuritis, which people eating, if they eat a lot of conjured food, things like that, they can become very ill.
I gotta use that in one of my campaigns. My players have been talking about trying to solve a famine by summoning a bunch of food.
Yeah, that was always one thing that I always wanted to deal with in campaigns in previous time was, oh well, we'll just make good berries and we'll just eat those all the time. Well, that maybe that wouldn't be such a good thing for you. So at any rate, there's things like that. There are also storms that will occasionally bubble out of the maelstrom, and most of them don't reach the surface, but sometimes they will occasionally, and those can be very dangerous, either in a magical or just a general storm destruction sort of way. But yeah, I don't know. As far as technology goes, I can't think of. Like I said, I did mention the sail wagons.
Right.
That those use. Again, that's still kind of hence under transportation, but mostly pretty standard, medieval-ish fantasy world sort of fare, I think.
Yeah. Fair enough. So this map that you have around the sparkling sea, is it? I mean, it's a focused in area that still has like a lot of like 5 different, well, maybe more than 5, I guess, but like a couple different cultures around this area.
Mm-hmm.
Is this like the main part of what you're exploring within the book, or are there other continents and sections as well?
Well, yeah, for this book, this map is the focus. This is just for excuse me, for scale perspective sort of thing. Vorsland, the island where the wizards are, is roughly half the size of Colorado. So that gives you a little bit of perspective. This whole area probably would be roughly, I don't know, 2/3 maybe of North America in scope and size. And so there's definitely a lot more out there that we could explore later on, but this seemed like a more than a big enough chunk to chew.
Yeah, exactly.
for an initial offering. So
yeah, I mean, like the Forgotten Realms does that too. Like it's not the whole thing, and
yeah,
it's very frequent for campaign settings to focus on a specific area of the campaign world and have there be other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, just wanted to confirm, that's all.
Yep.
What have you used the world so far for within your own experience?
Honestly, so far, just some individual adventures. I have not. This is something I've been developing for the past, I don't know, year and a half. I started out with the idea that it would be a D&D world, and then, like I said, I kind of got wrapped up in Daggerheart and really liked it, so I changed my focus. I also really liked the idea of the collaborative world building and being able to leave a lot of areas just open for the GM and the players to be able to fill in as they felt the need. In any case, yeah, it's been mostly individual adventures and things like that. I did write one called The Tale of Two Farms, which I published on Drive-Thru RPG, and that is tied to this world, and it'll be included in the book as well, but it'll also be expanded upon to be able to run a couple of different campaigns depending on how you want to end it, how you want to focus that the ending of that adventure.
Mm-hmm.
The Fear Forever Falls one that'll be freely available will also, it'll have just one ending in the free version, but in the book there will be I think probably 3 different main antagonists that are causing the problem at the village, and the GM then can pick based on what sort of campaign they want to play, pick which one of those sorts of things they want to have as that antagonist that will then be the launching point for the type of campaign that they want to have later on.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. Well, it also kind of answers one of my other questions, because I was curious if you'd incorporate anything from the other things you've worked on in the past into Fractus, and it sounds like you sort of did, even if it was a more recent thing with that adventure.
Yeah. Well, and I expect that we'll probably have at least some cameos from Incredible Creatures in here as well. But so far, all the stuff that I've been creating for this is original. Although I guess there is one that's sort of an offshoot of one of those that we did for Incredible Creatures. But yeah, it's a lot of this is very new, and some of it is things I maybe have had rattling around in my head for a long time that have just kind of sort of coalesced here. But I definitely enjoy world building, and something that I definitely done a lot of, and either in the novel writing that I did before, or in different D&D campaigns and other sorts of RPG playing, that sort of thing, all through my life.
Yeah. Well, we're at the end of the questions I had. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about, or wish that I'd asked you?
Oh, let's see. Yeah, I wasn't completely sure what sorts of things we were going to be talking about. I didn't know if we wanted to talk about just world building in general either, but I know a lot of people suggest starting with a very small thing and then working your way out. And I've tried that in the past, and I just don't seem to work that way. And so things end up being a lot bigger than I wanted maybe to begin with. But yeah, I really enjoy world building in general, and just trying to figure out how things interconnect, and when you pull the string on one thing, and then how does that make other things either unravel or weave together in different ways. So
yeah, it's got to have this internal consistency to it where everything makes sense when you put it all together.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I was finish off by asking for some DMing advice that you'd like to share with people. So what have you got?
Oh, let's see. I mean, a lot. I've given talks at a couple of conventions and things on adventure writing and stuff like that, and definitely that's part of it. One thing I find that people will do a lot is either in adventure creation or just at the table is either calling for roles that the party has to succeed at in order for the story to move forward, and sometimes they don't, and then you get stuck. So if you have something that the party needs in order to move things forward, don't gate it behind a role.
Yeah, definitely.
And the opposite can be true as well. If you have something that you don't want to the party to succeed at, again, for story purposes or whatever, don't give them any opportunity to roll, because someone is going to roll that nat 20 and then expect that they have that they have solved that problem, or whatever it happens to be.
Right.
that you did not want to have happen, even if you set the set the difficulty exceedingly high, someone's going to roll that.
Right. Yeah.
Find a way to come up with the reason why they got it, and then you're in a pickle.
Yeah. You need to be able to say just no, and also be able to say just yes for the things that the adventure needs.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Alan. Why don't you finish off by telling people where they can find your stuff and Fractus?
Sure. This will be kickstarting probably begin the third week of February, and then run through maybe mid-March, somewhere in there. And you can find me mostly on Blue Sky as far as socials go. I'm Tucker Author on Blue Sky. And otherwise, you can find me on Drive-Thru RPG, Amazon, just under Alan Tucker, and various Discord servers.
Yeah, and we'll have links to all that stuff in the episode description.
All right, sounds good.
All right, cool. Yeah, thanks a lot, Alan. This was really cool.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Fractus should be out on Kickstarter as of March 3rd. You can click the link in the episode description to go check it out, along with all the other work that Alan's doing. Alan told me that he was planning on doing a 3-week campaign, so this is releasing on March 11th, which should give you 2 weeks from this episode release date to go and look at it before the funding campaign is done. Alan's had a lot of successful work on Kickstarter and on Drive-Thru RPG. You can definitely count on him to deliver based off his past work, so definitely recommend him. If you enjoyed listening to this show, please give us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you download your podcast. Helps the show out and get more people, and then hopefully get more content. And as always, I have to thank our patron, Darren. Thank you very much. And thank you everybody else for listening.